I think I'd be radical enough to say the only way of living an authentic human life is by being Catholic.
Can you elaborate on that statement, just for people, whoever's watching this, Catholic, Protestant, what does that mean?
When I was a kid, I was very much evangelical. I believe the scriptures, the high priestly prayer of Jesus before he died was, "May they be one, so the world may believe." So the reason for being prepared to become a Catholic and not be a priest, because the work for unity and evangelization was more important than me being a priest. Wherever anybody is, they have to follow their conscience, and to follow their conscience means they have to inform it. And the way you inform your conscience is by asking questions. Fundamentally, I'm a Christian, not because I have answers, but because I have questions.
For those who are watching this video who might be on the road to Rome, what kind of advice would you give them?
Don't be afraid.
Father Christopher, what is the Ordinariate?
It is a structure which was set up by Pope Benedict to welcome Anglicans into the full communion of the Catholic Church whilst maintaining their heritage. The lovely phrase that Pope Benedict used was treasure. He said, if you have a treasure, then share it, bring it into the Catholic Church. So I was an Anglican minister for a number of years. I responded to Pope Benedict's invitation. We were then came as a group with my former Anglican parish, and in this parish, borough, Most Precious Blood, we tried to maintain some of that treasure, that heritage. So it has an Anglican flavour, although we are, of course, Catholics. This structure was set up by Pope Benedict in the Constitution. The kind of permission and idea came in 2009, and it came as a result of Anglicans who had petitioned the Holy See over a number of years to seek some structure or some mechanism by which Anglicans could come into full communion of the Catholic Church. And Pope Benedict was generous enough to come up with this Ordinariate. And there are presently in the world 3 Ordinariates. There's one in North America, which is the Ordinariate of the Chair of St. Peter. There's one in Australia, which is the Ordinariate of Our Lady of the Southern Cross. And we have one here in England and Wales, which is the Ordinariate of Our Lady of Walsingham. Now, strictly speaking, there are only 3 separate Ordinariates around the world, but within each Ordinariate there are different communities. So in England, for example, we have England and Wales because we cover a bishops' conference, and there was one in Scotland, and we have about 40, I'd need to check the exact number, but about 40 different communities, and those are congregations of priests and people who gather together as former Anglicans, worshipping now in the full communion of the Catholic Church.
Individually, why did Anglicans kind of want to come back in communion with Rome? What instigated that conversation?
For the history of the Church and the Church of England, there have been individuals who have come into full communion and submitted individually. But I think part of what the Anglo-Catholic movement was about, and the High Church movement in the Church of England, was trying to find some ecclesial solution. So it wasn't just about coming, one at a time, but also hopefully coming almost as an entire church. I can remember, I'm old enough to be remembering when John Paul II came to England in 1982, May 1982, and there was a real excitement in the air, and there was such a movement in the Church of England at that time, and so many Anglo-Catholics who were practicing Catholics in every way, except just weren't in full communion.
Yes.
But they believed the sacraments, they loved Our Lady, they knew the duty of the Church, they honoured the Pope, they turned out in their thousands to see John Paul II when he came. And there was a real sense in which something is about to happen. I've spoken to Catholic friends since about this, and they now look on a bit bemused and say, well, we never thought that. But Anglo-Catholics thought there was going to be an announcement. When John Paul II met Robert Runcie in Canterbury Cathedral, it was a great occasion. They signed a declaration together, and as I say, we thought something's about to be announced. And if something had been announced then, it would have been an extraordinary event for the very thing that Anglo-Catholics were longing and hoping for. It didn't happen. Time took over, other theologies and ideas, and things just change. And that momentum somehow got lost. But nevertheless, there was still a very strong sense of some Anglo-Catholics who wanted to have that full communion of the Catholic Church.
Which led to Pope Benedict.
inviting us in through
Yes.
the Ordinariate, yes.
Okay. It's funny you say that because my previous conversation was with Father Ben Eden, who is an Anglo-Catholic priest, I think the administrator of the shrine in Walsingham, and he actually said one statement which I found like very interesting. He said, "We do recognize the seat of Peter, and we pray." And he personally hopes and prays for unity, but he knows that there are certain restrictions and things within the church that right now is not possible. And I also got to ask him, what does he think is preventing the Anglo-Catholic tradition from going in full communion with Rome? And he said, personally, I don't know, I think this answer was more personal to him, but he said that he would want the entire Church of England to be in full communion with Rome, as opposed to just the Anglo-Catholic tradition. And he hopes and prays that that happens someday. So that was, I sense unity in some shape or form in the future.
Yes.
But as of now, yeah,
absolutely. I think that's an honourable position to ultimately, when you're a minister, a priest in the Church of England, you are a pastor, you're caring for your people, and you want the best for them. So there are some perhaps Anglican Catholic priests who knew that their congregation would not come with them. So perhaps they were being good pastors and wanting to wait till they're ready and then lead the sheep into the fullness. But there comes a time where you have to say, well, how likely is that? There are now so many Anglicans who do not accept the unity, hope for unity. Other things have emerged with around sexuality, around women's ordination, around authority, Archbishop of Canterbury. I think it's an honourable position to hold and say, yes, I want the entire Church of England to come back in the church, into the full communion of the Catholic Church. But the rebuff to that would be say, well, how likely is that?
A lot of things will have to change in a way that I guess the CFE is not ready for yet.
Absolutely. But the thing what we have done here is maintain that Anglican-ness, the Anglican flavour.
Yes.
So when we have Mass on a Sunday, we use the Ordinariate use. So it has those elements of Anglican patrimony. I'm never happier when we have visitors. We have lots of visitors on a Sunday. We're in the middle of London. And at the end of Mass, people will ask and they'll say, is this Anglican or is it Catholic? And there's a sense of achievement because, we are Catholic, but we do smell of Anglicanism. We do have that Anglican flavour. So therefore people can come, recognise it and feel at home. And I think the other is within our groups, because there are in England now perhaps about, I need to get the number right, but maybe about 40 or 50 different groups across the country. We're one of those. But we did come together. It wasn't just me coming, it wasn't just my individual parishioners who came. There were about 40, 50 of us who came as a group. So, you can come and bring your entire church with you.
When I went to the Anglo-Catholic shrine for my pilgrimage in Walsingham, I was confused if the shrine was Catholic or Anglican because it looked super Catholic, everything that was doing very Catholic. And one of the priests there, Father Graham Rowland, is he's an amazing person. I don't know if you
I know him. He's a great friend and a great man. He's he's
amazing.
Priest.
Like that moment for me, it kind of looked like unity because we share all of these things. And my friend, I asked him because he's a convert. He moved into the Catholic Church from being Anglican, but he goes to Walsingham like every other time I call him, he's like, "Oh, I'm in Walsingham." And he told me that there are certain distinctions. We can't partake in the sacraments, unfortunately, but there's so much else that we can share. It was like a place where Catholics and Anglicans couldn't tell the difference. They're just there. Yeah, that kind of gave me hope.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Shrine of Our Lady of Walsingham, which is why the Ordinariate in England is under the patronage of Our Lady of Walsingham and St. John Henry Newman, because we love Walsingham, we love Our Lady. And yes, Father Graham Rowlands at Walsingham is doing an extraordinary job. And when he was a parish priest here in London, he's quite famous for his work and his skill.
I hear.
He's a great man, great man.
So can you give me like a breakdown of how you moved into the Catholic Church from the Anglican tradition? And maybe you can start off from when you were younger and you can just go all the way back to Adam if you want.
Oh my goodness. For the Ordinariate point of view then, from how we begun to be here Most Precious Blood here in the borough, was that when I was an Anglican vicar, I ran my parish as a Roman Catholic parish. How we behaved, what we did, what we taught. So it would be recognizable. If Roman Catholics came to my Anglican parish, they would have thought that we were Roman Catholics to the untrained eye. So we were deliberately doing that so that we could train and teach and learn and understand and enjoy what it was to be Catholic. Okay. So when Pope Benedict invited us, it was almost as if we were kind of oven ready. We were ready to go. So when the Constitution was announced, there was real excitement in my parish among some parishioners. Some decided straight away, some were hesitant, some were definitely no. Okay. So in the early days when it had been announced, this was 2009, so in 2010, we had a number of meetings in the parish. Now, again, I was forming my own mind. I wasn't 100% sure what I was going to do. This was you say you're going to do something, and then when someone asks you to do it, you think, oh, I've got to think about it now.
I can relate.
Yeah, because it was never probably realistic, then you never had to really process it. And someone rather cheekily said that how Pope Benedict called our bluff. He said, come on, you're serious? Then, well, come on. So we had to think about it. So I formed some discussion groups, and we had some various meetings in my Anglican parish when I was the vicar. And someone came to speak in favour. Someone came to speak against. Another person came to speak, not yet.
Was it in the format of a debate?
We'd had 3 different speakers, and each spoke. Then there was a conversation, and people decided in their own heart, not to me. But I did ask my people and said to them, if you want to tell me, that's fine. If you don't want to tell me, that's also fine. It would make life easier for me, so I can plan, so I can kind of make preparation about how we are going to move forward. But the one thing I did tell them was to come, not to follow me. You follow the Lord, do not follow me. And for that reason, I deliberately did not tell them what I was going to do. Okay. Partly in the early days I wasn't quite sure, but then latterly, when I was sure, I didn't want them to say, yeah, I'll do it because he is. You have to come because you want to. So then after discussions, eventually about 45 came in the first wave. The process was that I had to announce that I was leaving. I had to give my resignation to the Anglican bishop. And then my last Sunday, when I was the vicar, it was an attitude of thanksgiving for what I'd received and what we had received there. And we did sing the Te Deum, the song of thanksgiving, of gratitude to the Lord. There was no triumphalism. It was real gratitude. I was able to, because I was leaving the parish as the vicar, to say thank you to people who had been supportive and encouraging. Some lovely people had done great work. So there's a real sense of jubilation and joy. But I was very conscious that this might be the last time I will ever celebrate the Eucharist. And that was a really scary moment.
If I could go back to that, what you just said, what do you mean by the last time you might be able to celebrate the Eucharist?
We were high Anglicans, so we had Eucharist, Mass every Sunday, we called it. Yeah. And I said Mass as an Anglican vicar every day, Anglican priest every day. Because when you become a Catholic, you're a Catholic layman. You can't celebrate the Eucharist. Okay. So I knew that if I were to become a Catholic, there might be a time, if I wasn't selected for ordination, I wasn't chosen to be a Catholic priest, I'd never celebrate the Eucharist. So that last Sunday when I was in my Anglican parish, I was conscious, if I jump into this, I might not be selected, I might not be ordained, I might never celebrate the Eucharist. I've been an Anglican vicar, Anglican priest for 18 years, so, in the scheme of things, not that long. But nevertheless, I was very conscious. This might be the last time. And it was a strange feeling. When I went back to the vestry, to the sacristy, took the vestments off, this might be the last time. The following Sunday, I went to the local Roman Catholic church, which is around the corner, and that was a bizarre experience. So I left my vicarage. I went past my former Anglican church. My former parishioners were going in that direction. I was walking in that direction. And I went to the Catholic church for the Mass on the Sunday. I think it was at 10:30. And I deliberately did not ask anybody, are you going to come? I thought, I cannot put pressure on them. They follow the Lord. They don't follow me. And I arrived early. I sat at the back of the church and I prayed, Lord, send somebody. please send at least one. Don't make it only me. And people slowly arrived. And there were some people who I expected were going to come from what they had said and how I know them. There were, I would say, probably 10 people who came. They walked through the door, and my heart sang because I thought, I'd never have guessed you'd become a Catholic. But they arrived, and about 40 of them. So we went to the pub afterwards and drank champagne.
Yeah, I guess things worked out then.
So that group came. So in those early days, before we came here, we had to go through a catechetical program. I had to go through formation. So although I was selected, and the petitions went to Rome and came back, and I was chosen, so I was ordained. There were 8 of us, I think, in the wave I was ordained with. And we were ordained early. Normally you'd be ordained after 6 years formation program, but we were ordained, I was received in May, April into Catholic Church, but I was ordained in June, Catholic priest. So it was 6 weeks.
Wow.
I was a Catholic for 6 weeks before I was ordained. And most men would go through 6 years formation.
Yes.
And I had 6 weeks. And that was because of Pope Benedict. And the reason was because he wanted priests and people to stay together. Priests with their pastor. So deliberately we formed these groups around the country, and here we formed our group. I was the pastor of my group, and I led them and taught them, and then we were received as a group at Easter 2011.
When you were going through this process, what kind of questions did you wrestle with outside of, let's say, for example, the Eucharist? You already mentioned that, but what other maybe theological questions, or what kind of questions did you wrestle with? Well,
theological questions, no, I didn't have any.
Yes.
Because we were, I've been teaching the Catholic faith, the Roman Catholic faith, to my people for a long while. So there was nothing we hadn't already wrestled with or understood.
Okay.
I think probably the biggest, not a wrestle, but it was well, I'll tell you what happened, and perhaps it might explain what I was feeling.
Yeah.
We were received on the Monday of Holy Week in the evening at 6 o'clock. That Monday was a strange Monday because it was just an awareness of that day I was about to become a Catholic. I'd been an Anglican priest for 18 years. I'd been a vicar for 15 years. I'd lived in that house, that vicarage, for a number of years. I'd had a happy life. I loved what I did. I was very happy, and I was about to walk away from it. It wasn't just, changing job. You're leaving your life, your friends, the environment. You're leaving everything. And I remember walking to where we were received at St. George's Cathedral, and I walked to the cathedral in the evening, and as I walked up Kennington Park Road to the cathedral, in my mind all the time was, is this right, Lord? Should I do this, Lord? Is this the right thing to do, Lord? It was a long, slow walk. I arrived at the cathedral. We were received by our ordinary, Monsignor Keith Newton, who Pope had appointed to be the ordinary of the Ordinariate here in the UK. And I was sitting in the congregation for the Mass, and during the course of the liturgy, those to be received are asked to go, will they please stand? And when he said, would you please stand? I sat there and thought, is that me? Should I? And I looked around, and I saw all my wonderful people of my parish who were courageous enough to stand. And I thought, I'm going to stand with them. And I stood, and we went forward. And I was the first to be received. We stood in a circle, and I was the first to be received.
Yeah.
It was a scary moment. Someone described it, I think it's a good explanation, was that when you become a Catholic, they call it jumping the Tiber. And for some people, it is an enormous cavern. And I felt that as I was going to the cathedral to be received, I thought, this is an enormous cavern. I have to jump. I'm not sure I'm going to make it. I'm not sure I'm going to do it. But once you've jumped it, you turn around and you see it's a tiny little stream, dead easy. Crossing it was no trouble at all. So there's that kind of feeling. The other feeling was you're on top of a swimming pool, in a swimming pool on a diving board, and you look down into the swimming pool and there's nothing in there. And the person saying, jump, you'll be fine, jump. And you think, are you mad? And you have to trust. You trust the Lord. So again, someone said, you're going to jump, but the Lord will catch you. He'll catch you. And by the time you get there, it's nice and full and even warm.
Yeah.
So was it fearful? Wasn't theological? It was probably more emotional.
Yeah.
Can I do this? Can I do this? Yeah.
So you said you were sort of fearful that this might be the last time you're celebrating the Eucharist, but you made the jump anyway. You took a step of faith. Why did you take that step of faith? What did you think you were lacking where you were, because you had your parishioners, you said you were happy, and what were you lacking here that you then happened to find in the Catholic faith which led you to make the
Sure.
step of
Okay.
faith?
I think there were two things really. First was when I was a kid, I was very much evangelical. I belonged to house churches. I carried a floppy Bible around with me. I had a wooden cross around my neck. And if any priest called themselves father, I would harangue them and tell them, call no man a father except your Father who is in heaven. So I was very evangelical. I believed the scriptures, and that was a kind of a sense of importance. As I grew, both in grace and holiness, I hope, and also in intellectual ability, I realized that many of the evangelical and Protestant answers didn't satisfy the questions. And I kept asking these questions and kept asking. I was involved with a lovely parish when I was a kid. It was in Kent. And I would go with these questions to my priest, perhaps being critical of him. But I remember I asked him a question once, and he laughed. And his response to me was, "Oh, Christopher, you don't know that. Oh, you are funny. You don't know that." And I stood there and shook my head, and I still don't know. I vowed in that day, if anybody has a question, I will answer it. I'll do my best to answer it. So in that evangelical and Protestant phase, I had lots of questions that never answered. Purely by chance, I came across an Anglo-Catholic priest, purely by chance, got chatting and became friends, and I went to his church, and I was a server on the altar and things. And he answered the questions. And for the first time, I thought, yeah, that makes sense. That joins up. So it was only in that Anglo-Catholicism that the questions that I had were answered. Evangelicalism never did.
Just to touch on that, you said you were at this state of mind where you were like, no, call no man your father. How did you go from there to serving at the altar with an Anglo-Catholic priest?
It was as a favour. There was another friend of mine used to serve at this church, and they were having some festival, I forget what it was now, and they wanted some extra servers, and he said, would you come?
Okay.
And being a man of honour, I said I would go, and I went. When I walked in, I saw what was there were statues of Our Lady. I saw 6 candles on the altar. I could smell the incense, and I thought, oh my goodness, what on earth is this? But as a matter of honour, I said I would, and I did. And I thought, I'll do it and go and never return. I'm going nowhere near there again. When the liturgy began, the priest celebrated the Eucharist. There was something about him. When he celebrated, he prayed, he was a different person. His dynamic changed. And I thought, wow, I will come back. And we became great friends, friends.
What was that question that you were wrestling with, or questions, or some of those questions?
There were kind of some joined up things, fundamental things. How did the world begin? Why are we here? How is Jesus present in the Eucharist? Why is Eucharist important? I hesitate to tell the question that I asked this particular priest, but for clarification, perhaps I will. The question was, I was down in Kent, it was the Diocese of Canterbury, and there was a suffragan bishop. The suffragan bishop was the Bishop of Maidstone.
Okay.
And in my mind was, a cathedral's a cathedral because it has a bishop. So therefore, a bishop has to have a cathedral named after that town, Canterbury, London. Why isn't Maidstone a city? Do you get the logic? There's a Bishop of Maidstone. So therefore, why isn't there a Cathedral of Maidstone? Why isn't there a City of Maidstone?
Yeah.
It's a logical question, isn't it?
Yeah.
For an 8-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And he laughed and said, you don't know that. I figured it out now, but at the time I didn't figure it for a long while. So it was those kind of questions. They might be silly questions, they might be childhood questions, but they were questions.
Yeah. What was the answer you got from the Anglo-Catholic priest? I'm curious.
I didn't ask him that particular question.
Okay.
But the question from the Anglo-Catholic priest, it was more about the Eucharist, Our Lady, why we're here, how we achieve salvation, how the death of Jesus saves us. It was all those kind of questions that were never ever satisfactorily answered. And I think from my evangelical days, when I was a floppy Bible carrying evangelical, it was about the unity of the church. I believe the scriptures, and the high priestly prayer of Jesus before he died was, may they be one.
Yeah.
So therefore that command to be one, it's a dying man's wish. It's his last will and testament. May they be one before he died. So, this is significant.
Yeah.
So the work for unity was really, really important. And it was that they may be one, so the world may believe. So the work for unity has to be important for the sake of evangelization.
Yes.
If we are to be evangelists and want the world to believe, then we have to do what Jesus asked us, and that is to be one, so the world may believe. Yes. So the work for unity was so important. So I got into the Anglo-Catholic world because questions for the first time were being answered, and then got into the attitude of the scriptures being important and the work for unity for being important. And the work of Anglo-Catholicism was working for unity with Rome, with Peter, because you are Peter, and on this rock I'll build my church. It wasn't on the Methodist Congress. It wasn't on the Archbishop of Canterbury. It was on Peter. So therefore Peter's important, the Pope, and working for that unity. And then as the work for unity amongst Anglo-Catholics began to kind of fade away with things like ordination to women, same-sex marriage, marriage after divorce, and all those things, they were the button issues. They were the things presenting at that time. As time goes on, other things will be presented. But for me, in my generation, it was those things. And so therefore they became a problem, not in themselves, but because they were a bar to the unity for which we were working so the world may believe. Those were the issues. So the reason for being prepared to become a Catholic and not be a priest, because the work for unity and evangelization was more important than me being a priest.
Do you think the Ordinariate fills a gap within the Catholic Church, not in the negative sense, but does it add something to the Catholic Church that you think wasn't there previously?
Yes, most certainly. Most certainly. There is a mind in some people of you're either Catholic or non-Catholic. And there is, for some, the idea of what it means to be a Catholic is there's a kind of just one thing and one way of behaving, one way of believing. But we know that in the Catholic Church there are many other rites and traditions which are in communion, but not necessarily of the Roman rite.
Yes.
So the Ordinariate, we have a form of the liturgy that we use when we celebrate Mass. So we are Catholics of the Roman rite, but we have a use within that rite. So therefore we have elements of Anglican liturgy, which have been approved by the Holy See, that we can use. And so when Anglicans might come to an ordinary use Mass, they will hear prayers they recognize, like the prayer of humble access, the collect for purity. And these we bring as a treasure, as Pope Benedict said, a treasure to be shared. And they do offer something. They are very beautiful and very rich. The other thing, of course, famously is evensong. We have regular evensong here. We have choral evensong very regularly, and that's a treasure to be shared. So perhaps jokingly, some other Anglican churches now have Catholic liturgy by having evensong.
For viewers who don't know, we're in the most precious blood of Jesus. That's what the church is. That the right name?
No, just precious blood. Most precious blood.
Most precious blood. Yeah. That's it. Okay. What is the demographic like that? Since you've become a priest here, do you see many converts coming into the church from the Anglican tradition or some other tradition?
In the early days of the Ordinariate, when it was first established in 2011, there was across the country probably about 600 people who joined. That was the initial wave. There have been smaller groups coming to full communion since, but the Ordinariate was designed for Anglicans to come into full communion. Pope Francis developed it slightly to say those who were of Anglican heritage, which include Methodists,
Right.
but also those who had been re-evangelized. So it is possible to be Catholic, baptized, confirmed, if you had then fallen away from the church for whatever reason, but then you are re-evangelized through the ministry and work of the Ordinariate, you can then join the Ordinariate.
Okay.
And we have quite a few of those. So a number of people who maybe made their first communion as children, lost their way, then found faith and came back here and are involved here at Precious Blood, and then come to more mature faith, and then have received the sacrament of confirmation, so full initiation, through the ministry of the Ordinariate. Therefore, they can join. So it's not just Anglicans, it's those who've been re-evangelized by the ministry of the Ordinariate who can become Catholics, members of the Ordinariate. So in this parish, because we are quite international, we're in the middle of London here, so we also consider it a treasure to be shared. So people who have faith in, who have always been Catholics, but they have never experienced that Anglican dynamic, and they too have come because we are an Ordinariate parish.
Right.
If I was to count how many Ordinariate and how many non-Ordinariate, it's impossible to say.
Yeah.
But because we have the Ordinariate use on a Sunday, they come because we're Ordinariate use.
What is the Sunday attendance like here?
It varies quite a lot. We have 2 Mass on a Sunday, 9:30 and 11. Numerically, the early Mass gets about 40 to 60, but also on Sunday we have probably anything between 100 150.
Okay.
And that's total congregation.
Right.
Ordinary membership is about 80, I would say,
Okay.
signed up members.
I want to talk a bit more about evangelizing. So you told me you grew up as an evangelical Christian, and obviously the one credit I would love to give to evangelicals is that they're very passionate about scripture and about evangelizing. It's in their name. So what does evangelizing look like for you today as a Catholic Ordinariate priest?
Evangelization it's ultimately about getting people to have the fullness of their life, which can be offered only by loving and following the Lord Jesus. So often people want to know what's life about, they want to be happy in their life. I think I'd be radical enough to say the only way of living an authentic human life is by being Catholic. As radical as that.
Can you elaborate on that statement? And just for people, whoever's watching this, Catholic, Protestant, what does that mean?
The line that's being peddled all the time these days, in school, in society, wherever you go, is that it's your choice. You choose. It's entirely up to you. The trouble when we have this choice, and the choice is so wide, we don't end up with a choice, we end up with indecision, because you're never quite sure where to go. What is the best? What should I do? Oddly, the way to freedom, this is St. Augustine, the way for freedom is to narrow it down and to make a choice that you have already made. So choice, and how we live our lives, is never shall I do this or shall I do this. That's just creating indecision. The way to live free is to have made a decision that you then live. So it's never shall I do this, yes or no. Shall I do this? Yes, because it's already done. The decision's already made. This is St. Augustine. It's not toing and froing a decision, it's being faithful. So when you decide that you want to be free, you want to live the Christian life, you want to follow Jesus, you don't say every moment of the time, or shall I do it, shall I not do it, yes or no. You're saying not yes or no, you're saying yes, yes, because you're doing it, you've already decided. So then when you know what that life is, that's where freedom is, because you've already said yes. You're following the road you want to live. So what is the life you have to follow? What is this freedom that Jesus gives? Well, it's set out in the Catholic Church, in the Catechism, and in the Scriptures, and by being faithful to Him, by following the life that He would have you lead.
Touching on that, fullness can be subjective to different people, in that depending on different walks of faith where they are at that moment. There can be an evangelical. I know a few evangelicals who are really good people, close friends of mine, who would consider themselves to be in the fullness because of where they are at in their faith right now. So what makes the fullness in the Catholic Church different, and why should people consider it? Why should people genuinely sit down and look into the fullness of what the Catholic Church proclaims?
Wherever anybody is, they have to follow their conscience, and to follow their conscience means they have to inform it. You have to have an informed conscience. And the way you inform your conscience is by asking questions. And I think fundamentally I'm a Christian, not because I have answers, but because I have questions. And I've only ever found those satisfactorily answered in the Catholic Church. So it is a journey. And if someone is in Evangelical tradition or Anglican tradition, wherever they are, is to keep asking the questions, keep informing their conscience. And if they inform their conscience, then it would lead them to the fullness of the truth. The difference, I think, though, in the Catholic Church is that we're not in it on our own. We are on a journey, we are pilgrim people, and the difference in the Catholic Church is the Lord encourages us and feeds us with the sacraments. He feeds us with his grace. So by being part of the Catholic Church, you're not just left to find out these answers on your own. You're part of a group, you're in a society, the society of the Church, and the Lord feeds us through the sacraments of his Church, most especially through the Eucharist.
In practice, what does preaching the gospel at the end of every Mass, the priest says, go forth, the Mass has ended, means go forth and preach the good news. What is the good news, and how can Catholics go about doing that better?
I think on my gravestone, I want my most favourite phrase in the Scriptures, Jesus sets you free. Jesus sets you free. So getting people to realise that we have been set free, and getting others to be set free by believing and following Jesus, that's what it means to evangelize. That's what it means to, when you go out and proclaim the gospel, get people to be convinced that Jesus sets them free.
How should they do that practically? I'll take the example of an evangelical doing ministry. He or she goes out and is often very bold in preaching the word to people.
Yes.
How can Catholics have a similar mindset in that practically what does it look like for a Catholic to just go out and be more bold about the Catholic faith?
Being bold about it has a sense of being strident, of kind of pushing something forward, of, forcing something onto someone else's will. I'm not sure that always works these days. Kind of in my floppy Bible and haranguing people with it never works.
Never worked with me. I'm always annoyed when I step out of the station and I find people coming running after me.
Absolutely.
Bless those people, but I...
Yes. No. Yeah, absolutely. And so I think we have to be more subtle about it. Silly examples would be just planting seeds. And you can plant seeds very easily just in your conversation, how you are, what you say. A silly example might be that when you're in the pub with the friends, you could say, "Oh, did you see that YouTube clip by 14 Stations?" When you're at coffee with friends in the morning. So when I was at Mass on Sunday, when you're out, I don't know, you're just dropping things in so that people know that you are a Christian, you're a Catholic, that you're a disciple of Jesus. If you go in waving a flag and banging a drum, people's defenses are up straight away.
Yeah.
We have to be far more subtle about it these days. When you evangelize, you just drop seeds, you just open a door. And then when people do have questions, when they do realize that you're a Catholic, that you love the Lord, then they can,
they'll get curious.
And then when they do have questions, they then come and answer. They come and ask, and you can have the answer. If you push them into a corner, what they end up doing is finding reasons that they hadn't thought of until you push them into the corner.
Yeah.
So don't push them into a corner. So just gentle dropping seeds, and the Lord makes them grow.
There is this huge, in a sense, I would consider a problem within the Catholic Church, where a lot of young Catholics step out of their faith, step out of the Catholic Church because they don't get what's happening there. I was happened to me, happens to several of my friends. How can people watching this be more informed about how they can learn more about the Catholic Church, and what is it that is going to eventually, help them stay within the faith and learn more and grow deeper into it, as opposed to rejecting it and going off? And what
Okay.
is the reason for that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. We're very blessed living in London. There are lots and lots of Catholic churches. One of the mottos someone wisely said was, it doesn't matter where you go to Mass as long as you go to Mass. And you go where you're fed. If it's preaching, community, architecture, music, society, whatever it is, find a church, a Catholic church, we are going to be fed. And it's so important that we have those questions and we have the answers. If they aren't answered in that place or by that priest or by that community, go and find where it can be answered, because the answer is there. It is there. The Catholic Church has spent a lot of time on this kind of thing and will have the answer. You just got to find what the answer is. There was it was a survey not so long ago, and was asking or trying to find out why it is that Catholics left the church, and there were two reasons. The two fundamental reasons came in this particular survey. One was because people said, nobody spoke to me. The other was because people said they didn't have their questions answered. So if we want to be evangelists in our own parishes, if you see someone who you've not seen before, speak to them, find out their name, welcome them, befriend them. And when you create a society of friends, so often people who are involved in the church will be people who have friends who are involved with the church. Very rarely you'll find solitary Catholics. Very rarely. So having friends and having conversations is really important. And the other is, form groups. We have a young adults group where you're able to ask those questions, different stages of life, but never be afraid to ask the question. And if you don't get it answered, go and find someone who will answer it, because the answer is there.
For those who are watching this video who might be on the road to Rome, what kind of advice would you give them if there is any contention within them, or if there's any fear of giving things up? Because you personally gave up, you thought you were about to give up celebrating the Eucharist, which is a big deal. So maybe you could speak to someone who is facing a similar fear on their road, as to maybe they're giving family, they're giving up friends. What would be your advice to them?
Fundamentally, don't be afraid. Do not be afraid. If the Lord is calling you, and in your heart and in your conscience you know this is what you should do not be afraid. The Lord will not let you down. And when you feel as if you might be having to give up things or abandon things, you're going to gain so much more, and He never expects you to abandon it. He wants you to bring it with you. That's who you are. That's how you have become the person you are because of your past and who you are. Bring it. Bring it, and do not be afraid.
What would you like to see more of in the world?
Consideration for others. So often people are concerned for themselves, what I can get out of it, making sure that I'm happy. Time and consideration for others. We're Christians, we believe in a gospel of love. God loved the world so much. And if that love, which is ultimately to be more concerned for others than you are for yourself.
Thank you for your time, Father.